What's going on, everybody? I'm John Hendrix, head audio engineer here at Twisby Records, and I want to welcome you to the first in what is hopefully a long line of fun and informative podcasts that we can provide you. You know, dipping our toes into content creation in this day and age. It's essential no matter what you want to do. The good news is I find it kind of fun. Some other members of the team maybe not so much, but we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Is that the voice in my head? Is that the voice in my head talking to me? Who was that? You're popping up just a little too early, bud.
My bad.
But I digress. Anyways, seriously, I want to welcome you. This is very exciting for me. It's been a long road to get here. We've had our doors open, our virtual doors open, for just over a year now, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's been an incredible journey to get to this point. And without further ado, I want to introduce one of my best friends and business partner, co-founder of Twisby Records, Kreg Durant. How you doing today, Kreg?
Not too bad. I guess it took forever to set this thing up, so little angry. Air Force is flying overhead, so sounds like I'm at a Call of Duty match.
Speaking of taking forever to set this up, I am exhausted. The amount of obstacles that have been in the way just trying to do this introductory podcast, I swear it's been at least a month since we sat down and started setting up the technical side of this. Anything the universe could throw at us to get in the way, it has, but for better or worse, we're here now. First episode's rolling, so, you know, I suppose at this point we're unstoppable. But that's enough of small talk and stuff that doesn't matter too much. Why are we here? Well, I suppose to answer that question, we're going to get into a little bit of a story time. So, Twisby Records, who are we? Why are we? How are we? There's going to be a lot more story to come in this podcast if you continue to stay with us, but the Reader's Digest version of what we're doing here. So, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate, during the pandemic, March 2020 to be exact, is when Kreg and I found out that we had lost our jobs. And a short background on us is we were touring audio engineers. We had been on the same show for at least 3.5 years by that point. It might have been almost closer to 4. Well, no, it would have been 3. It would have been just about 3. And then, well, as we know, the world just stopped turning for a while there in 2020. And that found us jobless and really with our careers and livelihood in limbo. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know when exactly we'd be able to get back into doing what we had done previously, which was live audio engineering and getting out there and gigging all the time. So around July of 2020, our old boss decided he was just going to come and hang out for a little while. So he was hanging out with me, just trying to figure things out, because nobody knew what was going on. He needed a place to stay. So, of course, I welcomed him in with open arms. In July of 2020, we headed down to Texas, a little bit of a road trip, meeting some friends along the way, spent some time in Nashville. And when we got to Texas, which is where Kreg is from, we just kind of showed up at his house relatively unannounced and was like, "Hey, man, what's going on? You busy? You doing anything? Let's hang out." So we did, and over a few beers, I was like, well, you know, we have no idea what's going on right now. We're all unemployed, and we don't know when we're going to get a chance to be employed again as far as live audio is concerned in pursuing our careers. I built a little studio space in my house to write some music. We got nothing but time right now. You should come on up and write music and continue what we were doing while we were on the road. Well, for better or worse, Kreg said, yeah, sure. I'm in.
That's not how it worked. You kidnapped me, all right? You've been feeding me nicotine and beef jerky down in the basement. Send help.
You always love to say it happened like that, but no, sir. And even if that was true, considering nicotine and beef jerky is basically your two major food groups, I don't see that as such a bad situation for yourself.
This is very true.
But anyways, like one big happy family, we headed back up here to Pennsylvania where we're located, to my place, and we hung out for a while, and we started writing some music. That took up most of 2020 and into the beginning of 2021. Our boss left. He found a tour to go on, and he did some COVID touring as things started to pick back up and navigate through those very uncertain times. And around 2021, or May-ish, is when Kreg and I seriously sat down and started trying to figure out, okay, just what the heck are we going to do? There's no telling when we're going to be able to tour at scale. There's a whole ton of uncertainty, let alone the challenges of everything ramping back up logistically and worldwide touring, which there's still some trouble today with large tours trying to tour around the world. Transportation and things like that is still a mess. Almost 3 years removed from this catastrophe. So
That's
after
some of those bills that are coming out, though, are great. Like seeing A-list acts in a basement still is incredible to me.
As a music lover, I suppose you would be the one that would absolutely win out of all of this, because most of those major tour bills coming out, like Kreg said, are completely stacked. It's incredible to see so many huge acts hopping on tours together and not just doing headlining shows all themselves with more minor support acts. It's a great time to see music. So if you've ever had dreams of what a super concert might be for you, chances are you could end up seeing it sometime soon here in the future, and maybe even for the foreseeable future. Everybody's still playing catch up. It's been a mess. But after a year of just sitting around trying to write music and kind of moping on the couch, wondering how we were going to pick up the pieces of our shattered careers, we got the bright idea to try to dive back into what mutually both got us into trying to make a career in the music business in the first place, and that was making great records. So we got the idea to open up a studio. We renovated space in my house to do an actual treated studio space and do it the right way.
All the math. We did all the math.
Even though the accent may make you think otherwise, Kreg is 100% a math whiz, and everything that we've done to the studio space itself is because he actually crunched the numbers and made it work. So I got to give credit where credit's due. That was definitely playing to your strength.
Well, I'm pretty much Einstein, you know? I'm Einstein. Well, no, I'm an Einstein bagel. I'm shaped like a bagel.
Ah, come on, dude. Have you seen me? I'm a whole baker's dozen. But anyways, we decided that we were gonna open up a studio, and so we did. And as most good ideas come, this was over a couple of frosty adult beverages out at the bar as things were reopening and kind of getting back to normal as far as all of that was concerned. So there was a conversation, and this is a part of the story that Kreg loves to tell, because anytime we meet with people in person that ask about what we're doing and we tell them about what we're doing here at Twisby Records, it's his favorite part of the story to tell. So Kreg, why don't you tell all of our new friends here watching, what's Twisby mean? Why would we name Twisby Records Twisby Records?
Because we wanted to be weird.
And if you've made it this far, you've definitely been able to ascertain we're pretty weird.
No, it's as I sit here drinking my hot tea, it's time for the conversation. If we were going to do this, we said we're going to do it the right way, the way it should be, yes, which is what Twisby stands for, the way it should be, comma, yes, TWISBY. And it all stemmed from that. And we're still working out what the way it should be means, but essentially we want artists to have all of the chances to be successful. And with so we want all artists to have the best chance to succeed, essentially. There's so many scams out there. There's so many people that are just willing to take your money and not do anything for it. Even in mixing and mastering, we want to change the way that's being done. A lot of mixing and mastering engineers will just take your music, mix it, master it, whatever you ask them to do, which is fine. That's what you paid for. But they're not going to give you feedback how to improve your recording process. They're not going to give you feedback how you can improve your recordings, maybe song arrangement if they see some issues. I mean, mixing and mastering engineers, they get a lot of songs, if they're good at least. They get a lot of songs in, so they know what works and what does not work. We've heard it all.
That's absolutely correct. Our tagline is trying to help the DIY musician. That's really why we've done this, as opposed to just trying to be mercenaries or work for hire using the technical skills that we've gained and honed over the past 15 plus years between the both of us individually, mixing, mastering, production, learning how songs work, what makes them tick and what makes good songs great. Working for hire and being mercenaries would be cool, and not being totally invested in the artist personally or giving an ounce of a care what they want out of their music. And that would be fine, but to truly do this the way it should be, it has to be artist first. And you have to care, and you have to be invested in the artist and the music that they're trying to create. So if we can do anything to be able to help someone along their musical journey, whether you're just trying to finish a demo and you're trying to get your first song done and it's been a heck of a journey for you with a ton of your own stumbling blocks along the way to getting there, or whether you've released tons and tons of music and you're just looking for somebody that has a fresh perspective, or somebody that could be more invested than people that you might have worked with in the past. That's why we're here, and that's why we're doing what we do. So if there's going to be one thing that truly sets us apart, is probably, in my opinion, going to be our commitment to artists. If you're looking for people that are invested and care about what you do and want the very best for your art, I would look no further. That's what we're here for. It's what we do, and it's why we get out of bed every day, is because of music. Because if it wasn't for that, we'd have nothing else of value to offer the world. At least I can speak for myself in that regard. This is what I got. So 110% is being put into it.
I don't know. I feel like I'd be pretty good at brewing beer or something. Like maybe that could, no, I would be really bad at it. I'd be awful. Yeah. Now I'm thinking about it. It's not a good idea. So we're going to do this. Let's just stick to this.
No Twisby branded IPAs coming anytime soon there.
Tastes like belt leather.
So you got a little bit of an idea of what got us to this point to start even doing this in the first place. But now we'll have an even bigger story time and give you a little deeper dive on both of our backgrounds to just get to know us, whether you're seeing this passing by, whether you're somebody that we've already worked with and you see this and you're just trying to learn even more about the people that you have been working with, or if your YouTube algorithm somehow got you here and you just don't know what you clicked on, but now you can't click off, strap in, because it's going to be a little bit of a story time here.
Yeah, like and
because
subscribe.
I know.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like and subscribe. The bell icon, right?
Because
now we're content creators
we were told
too.
That y'all don't do that unless you're told. So unless you don't like us,
Yeah.
then,
So
then still like and subscribe.
I would blame them. I don't like me either, but I digress. So I'll lead this off, because if it wasn't entirely obvious, Kreg doesn't like being on camera, and he for sure doesn't like talking, and he doubly doesn't like talking about himself. So I'll go first to take that weight off his shoulders.
Yeah, you've been on screen almost the entire time, so I'll just pop in for just a second, and then he shouldn't have given me the ability to control the camera angles, because it's just all him. He has no idea.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I expect nothing less.
You turned me into a video guy. I resent you for that now.
Oh, man. So my personal history, it's been a bit of a journey to get here. My first real interaction with music would have been when I was 5 years old. Like most parents, my parents wanted to get the most mental development they could. And music is one of those ways to really stimulate your mental growth and to foster creativity and get your imagination really pumping. So at the tender age of 5, they gave me a choice. Now, 5-year-olds, if you can remember what it was like to be 5, aren't really the brightest. And if you have some 5-year-olds of your own, also sometimes maybe not the brightest, but we're kids. My limited knowledge of what music was, they gave me an option. You can either play violin or you can play guitar. And I was going to be classically trained through a music school here in Pittsburgh, learning classical style music. So instead of choosing the guitar, my young 5-year-old self chose the violin. Didn't know a lick of it, didn't really comprehend what the violin did in music or what its purpose was. I just chose it because it was a pick A or B scenario. So that's the one I went with. So my journey began playing the violin at the age of 5. And then as I grew up fast and I was always bigger. So the violin started to look kind of small on me for a kid my size because I grew vertically quite fast as well as horizontally. So it was kind of like a grizzly bear playing a violin. By the time I was the age of 8, it looked really funny. Like if you can picture the bear on the unicycle, that was kind of like the same thing, except just a bear playing a violin. So
do you have any
my music
pictures
teacher
of
just...
this?
Not currently, but for sure there's probably some in the archives at Dad's. And I'm kind of glad they're there because you for sure would throw that in there for this.
Yeah, that's immediately what I was thinking.
I know.
It would
I
be
know
on
you
screen
would.
now. If I find it, it would be here. And if I didn't,
Right,
then
yeah.
you're just looking at me. So
But always, this is what you do best. But around the age of 8, my music teacher switched me to a viola because it was a bit larger and would fit me better well with the dexterity I had with my larger limbs. So I was taking lessons to learn how to play these instruments and also taking separate lessons to just learn music theory in general. And that lasted for about 5 years, I would say, from the time I was age 5 to age 10. The music theory classes did. And then from the age of 10, around the age of 13, still was playing the viola. Now, because it was a choice that I made when I was 5 years old, as I got older, I started to resent playing it a little because I didn't feel like it was a choice that I made, or at least made consciously. And there wasn't just it just didn't resonate with me as much as other instruments that I ended up picking up later in life. So it was a daily battle with me and my mother to get me to practice said instrument. And it would be a struggle. We'd end up getting into arguments. I'd angrily whip my viola out of its case, play through like 5 songs in 10 minutes at like 200 times speed to just get through it. And then I would call it a day. While this was going on, little decor viola. Could you imagine?
Practice.
Could you imagine doing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star just at like 250 times speed?
I bet it's a bop.
That's what it was like.
It's just straight up bop.
That's exactly what it was like. At the same time, 10 years old is when I switched schools, and the school that I went to had a music program that they made everybody in elementary take. You didn't have a choice. It was part of their curriculum. And the things that they made you take were, one was choir. So, of course, you had to sing in a choir. The second one, which is kind of unique, is hand chimes. So if you can picture a tuning fork that's thicker with a little felt mallet that you play with your hand, that's a hand chime. So from 4th grade to 5th grade, I was also doing that along with choir. When we hit 6th grade, they upgrade you from hand chimes to actual hand bells. And it's a similar setup. It's a big brass bell, felt beater on the inside that you play, and you make music with that way. That was another thing that I was kind of forced into because it was something that my mom wanted me to do also. She enjoyed it and she liked it, and that's fine. I I understand that now. I definitely, as a teenager, resented it because I just did not enjoy it at all. One bit. Did not enjoy it. And I ended up having to do that through my senior year. So handbells through the senior year, hand chimes until I hit middle school. Now, during this time, the viola, I had had enough. I said, no more. I'm done. It was about maybe 6 months before my 13th birthday. And my parents are like, well, what instrument would you want to play? By that time, I had really started to develop my own taste in music. So the first 2 CDs I remember buying with my own money were Sum 41's Does This Look Infected? And Slipknot's Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. So you can kind of see where my musical taste was at the time. And I told my parents, an electric guitar, absolutely. Now I want to play an electric guitar. That instrument's badass. That resonates with me. That's what I want to do. So 13th birthday rolls around. They got me a Squier Strat starter pack with the little 15-watt amp. It was a Royal Blue Strat with the rosewood fretboard, and it was a great guitar. I played the snot out of it throughout middle school and my high school years, and it served me really well. I ended up selling it to one of my classmates who wanted to learn how to play guitar. I had started acquiring others by that point, and it served her well. So trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life now that I had a guitar in my hands. You know, sophomore year, parents are like, well, where do you want to go to college? What are your plans after school or after you graduate your senior year of high school? And I told them with my guitar in hand, I'm just going to play music. I'm going to go to Musicians Institute in Los Angeles, and I'm just going to be like a session guitarist. I'm going to play in bands, and that's going to be it. That's how I'm going to make my living. That's what I'm going to do with my life. I'm just going to be a musician. That's it. And they were like, okay, all right, maybe not. Let's think about this for a little bit. So I was still like pretty holding my ground on that one. And then my dad eventually talked to me at some point in my junior year. He's like, well, maybe you should think about being on the other side of that control room glass. You probably could have a better shot at having a successful career in music if you were actually engineering it and producing it. And I started to think about it, and I was like, okay, I could see that making sense. So for all intents and purposes, my career of being a hotshot session guitar player and making my living in just playing guitar and playing in bands was put on hold while I gave that some thought and consideration. I looked at schools on where I wanted to go, and since my parents wanted me to go to college and they were going to help me pay for it, they wanted me absolutely to take the next step to get some higher education. So after researching some recording schools, I ended up on Full Sail University, of all places. And depending on who's watching this video or what you know, I mean, Full Sail's got its history. Everybody has their opinions about it. It's a very hot topic, which can lead to some passionate beliefs, depending on what side of the fence you are about Full Sail. But it was one of the best times of my life. When I got there, it was scary at first because, I mean, it's always scary taking the first step. You're moving away from home after graduating high school, leaving the only thing you've ever known for so long to move 1,000 miles away and start learning with a whole bunch of people you never met before. But it was a really good time. I enrolled in the Recording Arts Bachelor's of Science degree program in June of 2020, and I graduated from that in March of 2012. And after I graduated from that, I loved it so much I decided to go back twice because in the middle of it, getting towards the end of the degree program, it became apparent that to make a really good living in the music business, I would have been better served to stick on the live side of things. So in April of 2012, I started show production at Full Sail University and had an even better time than I did throughout my entire time in recording arts. It was a lot more fun, and the best part was it was only 9 months because the first 12 months of both recording arts and show production were the exact same classes. So when it was time to get into show production, I just had to take the show production specific classes, which rocked. I had, again, the second best time of my life, and I met a lot of great people and made a lot of good friends and connections that helped me out after graduation because I got my first touring gig from the friends and connections that I made while I was there. Graduation rolls around in February of 2013, and I wanted to start my career right off and hit the ground running, but I made the decision to move back home to Pittsburgh and be close to family to deal with family matters that were going on at the time. So packed up my life again and came back home and floated for a few months trying to figure out how to get my career really started. And I ended up applying and getting a job working for PSAV at the time, now known as Encore Global, in August of 2013. And I dove headfirst into the wonderful wide world of corporate audiovisual. Not really my favorite thing to do. Corporate is taxing. It's not a lot of fun to me personally. The thing that got me through that period of time was, again, the friends and colleagues that I made working there. They made the day in and day out a lot easier, and we were able to find enough humor in the days to get by and get through no matter what event it was or what ridiculous demands corporate clients were asking of us. Throughout that time, my friends that I had made in college reached out to me numerous times. The first time, and they said, "Hey, you want to tour? We need a guy on our audio team and want to know if you want to take the gig." And I said, "No, I can't right now, unfortunately. I got to stay home. I got to be close to family. I'm still dealing with some stuff." And they're like, "All right, cool." A few months go by. I get another message like, "Hey, man, we still need an audio guy. We're kind of rotating through people out here. It's a bit of a mess." And I said, "Unfortunately, now is just still not a good time. I just can't leave home right now. I got too much going on that I need to be here for and to help out with." In March or April of 2016, I get a message for the third time. And this time, when they reach out to me, I said, "Yeah, of course, I'm ready to go. I got everything taken care of on the family side. I can just essentially upend my life and hit the road," which is what I wanted to do from the very start anyways. That's one of the big reasons why I went through show production and Full Sail. I go through a phone interview with the department head of audio, and we hit it off. Great chemistry. He's like, "Yeah, man, I'm good to go and want to hire you on and get you going." So I go through the onboarding process. In May of 2016, I put in my notice to all of my fellow colleagues at PSAV around that same time and say that I'm going to hit the road and do what I actually wanted to do. And in August of 2016, this fresh-faced summer child went on his very first tour, which was a tour of Europe. And it was one hell of an eye-opening experience, to say the least. But also, again, when I think of the best times of my life, that also is one of them, because how many people get to say that not only did they get a chance to tour, but their very first tour was a tour of Europe? I mean, that's pretty cool. And I get there, and I feel like a fish out of water. It's been a while since I've had to put my high-level skills to use, everything that I had learned in a foundational basis when I was in college, and it was rough. I struggled for a little while. Eventually I did get it together though, and I had a blast while doing it. We get through the European tour, which took us to most of the United Kingdom. We did Northern Ireland, Paris, France, Barcelona, Spain, Hamburg, Germany. We even did Sweden, Stockholm and Malmo, Oslo, Norway, and even Zagreb, Croatia, which is a beautiful city. We get through that tour and we get back home. It is about a month of downtime before it's time to head back to HQ, refurbish all the gear, and get ready to build and rehearse an entire new show to go out and tour the States for 2 years and then a year abroad. And the cycle continues as it does working for companies like that. So we get there and things are going good, go through rehearsals, not much changes there. As soon as we hit the road in June of 2017, some major changes happened to the audio department. Our former boss, who came in as audio lead in between tours, got promoted to the head of the department because they decided to fire the head of the audio department at the time, which in turn bumped me up to lead as well. And that was definitely an interesting time because we were left a little in the dark on some things, but we managed to make it through and make it work as we do. And during that time, they sent somebody else out from another show to help us just to make sure that we didn't sink, but continued to swim. And in July of 2017, they finally got someone hired on full-time for the audio department that you might have met by now.
What's up?
I think I introduced him. Yeah, that's right. Kreg joined the audio team as an assistant in July of 2017 and was with us all the way to the end when we both lost our jobs. And it was one hell of a tour, to say the least. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean it was pretty ridiculous. It was very long, but it was fun. Very fun.
Super long. It was tough because we were on the road pretty much year round. There would be maybe a week of downtime where you could go home, or in the rare lucky case, you'd get like 3 weeks off just for spaces in the schedule, I guess. If they could make that show run every day a week, I'm sure they would. So we go through the US tour and everything's good there. Lots of ups, lots of downs, lots of crazy stories that we're not going to get into right now. But there is a story about what happened in Nashville that we might end up talking about it sometime on this podcast because it's great. And it was one of those
Leave them
things.
Broadway bros alone.
It's one of those things that if you weren't there, you would probably think that we're just crazy and complete liars. But I promise you, this happened. I'm only sorry that we never got video footage. But that's a tale for another day. So we go through our US tour. It wraps up. We get ready to head into refurbing all the gear and gear up for the international run. The first stop on the international tour is a 3-week stay in Mexico City. It was a fantastic time. There was lots to see and do, and lots of great Mexican food to eat and very cheap tequila to drink. Mm-hmm. And half of everybody got food poisoning, as you do in Mexico City.
I didn't. I did not.
No, he was fortunate. I was one of the unlucky few that for at least 72 hours, I thought I was going to die. I've never been in so much pain in my life.
I've eaten DFAC food in the military, so nothing is going to be able to poison me. That's it.
No, you got a distinct advantage. And after we leave Mexico City, I know it's international, and technically it still is, but after that it was 1 week in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico was the end of like the continental U.S. territory area of the tour. After that, we refurbed the gear back at home base, and everybody went home for 2 months. We actually got to sit and relax for 2 months while the gear made the trip by boat over to Europe to start another European tour. And
I think that's the last time I got a haircut.
You know,
I'm pretty sure.
That long, beautiful mane's been growing for a very long time.
It's been a while.
Actually, we're getting to that because I remember the last time you got a haircut.
You remember and I don't.
Like I said, I guess we're strange. I don't know what else to say.
Of course, I can't remember if I had breakfast this morning. I probably did not. Some
of the things I remember kind of get me scratching my own head, so don't mind me. We start our European tour in September of 2019 after we all fly over and get there. And we spend 3 weeks in Nottingham getting ready, get the show up, rehearse a little bit to knock the rust off, get new people acclimated, and then we hit the ground running. And when we get to London, which was the very next stop, late September, like maybe first week of October, the funniest thing happened. Half of everybody got really sick, violently sick with some sort of like chest, head cough thing they just couldn't shake. To this day, I still can't figure it out. I don't know what that could have been. But
were we responsible and we stayed inside? We canceled shows and everything, or did we do anything not responsible?
This is show business, buddy. What do you think? The show must go on no matter how many people are about to hack up a lung and die. So some foreign promoters visited our show in London in 2019, and it's a coincidental thing because, of course, nobody can prove a damn thing. It's all speculation, but that happened. Then everybody got sick, and we traveled all the way around Europe, all over, hit all our dates, never missed or canceled a show. People feeling like they're going to die. I was one of them. I did come down with whatever that mystery illness happened to be, and it got so bad that if you gave me laughing fits, it would give me coughing fits. And I would cough so much that it was hard to catch my breath, so it always felt like I was going to die. So, of course, Kreg made it his personal mission to make me laugh as much as I possibly could.
Yeah, because then I laugh harder, and then he laughs harder. So I, in turn, laugh harder and just keep going in.
But I'm still here, so your master plan. I don't think it worked.
Yeah, I failed. I totally failed.
If you were trying to knock me off then. But we make it through our European tour and we go home and get about 4 weeks or so off because all the gear has to leave from Europe and it heads to Johannesburg in South Africa because the next stop on our world tour is South Africa. And speaking of haircuts, the last time you got a haircut was right before we showed up in South Africa around the end of January. So that would have been about that time. Yeah. It's been a little over 3 years now since you cut your hair.
That was the mohawk too, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the mohawk. That thing was impressive back then. Now,
my COVID rally mullet.
That's it. So when we show up to South Africa, it kind of seems like a thing that may only happen in movies or documentaries, but it sure happened to us. When we get there, our gear is held ransom at the port. So we're sitting at our hotel in South Africa on call, and they told us, well, since you're on call, you can't drink. Well, if you know a touring crew at all, that doesn't usually tend to be the case, and our hotel was just so conveniently across the street from a liquor store, of all places, and at the time, South African rand and the dollar exchange rate worked very heavily in our favor, so I lost count of all of the bottles that were brought back to the hotel, and it was easy enough to do because the hotel had a nice pool area, so you can imagine where all those bottles were consumed at that time. But eventually we did get the call that the gear showed up at the venue and it was time to go to work. So we did. We got through the 2.5 weeks of show that we had there and left. And the rains in South Africa and Africa as a whole are truly blessed because during that loadout, it was a monsoon. So much rain came down and we couldn't get the gear into the shipping containers fast enough. So a lot of soaking wet gear got loaded into shipping containers to sit on a boat in Australia and wait for us when we got there for the next leg of the tour, which was going to be at the end of March, about March of 2020 was when we were going to show up in Australia. So we leave South Africa and get a few weeks of downtime before we got to all jump on our separate flights and meet up in Australia to continue the tour. During that downtime, I got some break work on a different show. And they were touring the States and a few places that we had been just recently. And this was like late February, very, very early March. We were playing Brooklyn, packed house. Packed house. They did a good job selling. It was very close to being sold out most nights.
Barclays Center, right?
Show was playing. Yeah, it was at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York.
Turntable.
Oh, that's so cool. If you've never seen the turntable that's in the Barclays Center for how they get trucks down there to unload gear, if you don't know much about it, just look it up because it's really impressive. Even if you don't know a lot about what's going on, the way they get trucks off the street and down in there, it's cool. It takes a long time, of course, because they come in an elevator, come out onto a turntable that rotates them much like the same way to rotate like train engines and cars and rail yards and things like that to get the trucks lined up at specific loading dock bays. That way you can just load and unload and keep going. But I digress anyways. Cool little tidbit of info there. A lot of cool things about the Barclays Center. But while all this is going on, we're starting to hear little rumblings about what's going on with this COVID/coronavirus thing. There's rumors of things going to be shutting down as it starts to spread. And we're like, well, okay, we'll see. We know this company that we're working for, come hell or high water, the show's always going to go on and they'll find a way. So we leave Brooklyn, we head to Newark, New Jersey, and start to hear a little bit more of the same. Crowds are still great, still coming out in big numbers and having good nights of shows. From there, we head up to Bridgeport, Connecticut, and same thing. We're starting to hear even more rumblings and rumors of things are going to close. And I can't remember off the top of my head if it was by that time certain tours were already getting canceled and certain other shows, like maybe theatrical stuff and things of that, were already starting to shut their doors. But after Bridgeport, Connecticut, we hit Long Island, New York, where we're going to sit down for 2 weeks and play shows. This is very much like March 8th, March 9th of 2020. That show also had a 2-day load-in, much like the show that we were working on. So we get through the 2 days of load-in required, and on the third day, we have a morning tech rehearsal to make sure everything works as it should. Just a brief little rehearsal and run through for the cast members to knock off any rust of a few days rest. We get through that, and afterwards we have a regular meeting, just any news, anything happening that's pertinent to us to talk about. And in that meeting, they informed us that the show that night was going to be canceled. I can't remember if it was the mayor of New York or the governor of New York, or a combination of both of them, that were starting to order things to get shut down. All they knew for sure is the show that night was going to be canceled. But don't worry, because the rest of the shows for the next 2 weeks, we're very confident that those were going to go ahead full steam. So we go back to the hotel with nothing to do. And no less than 45 minutes later, after we get back, we all get called to go into one of the hotel ballrooms for an emergency meeting where they proceed to tell us, tour's canceled. You're going home. You got to load out the show tomorrow, put it back in its trucks, and then we got you on flights the very next day. Don't know what's going to happen. Don't know when you're all going to come back to work, but bye. And so that was it. And being in all of that, like kind of watching it happen in real time as I was out there working those shows, is still surreal looking back, being able to watch everything just shut down one by one, watching the dominoes fall per se. Still, anytime I think about it,
should have got a real job.
Kind of
Should have got a real job.
Stare off into the void when I think about it all. But yeah, a real job, that wouldn't have happened. If we could have chosen an essential line of work for our careers, we might have been able to escape all of that. But yeah, at that point, I come home and it's March 14th, 2020. I remember the day. I got back home after getting off the flight from LaGuardia and wondering, what next? And I don't have to recap anymore because you already know the history of the company and how Kreg and I ended up getting together and doing what we do here. So now, if you've managed to stick with us this long, I know that was long, but that's essentially all there is to know about me. I've been very thorough. Now, I'm going to have Kreg do one of his favorite pastimes, which is talk about himself on a camera. And that's 100% sarcasm. This is absolutely what he hates the most. He does not enjoy anything less than doing this, but I'm going to help him out and throw him a bone. This is going to be a little bit more interview style, but because I'm just as curious as other people are. I've heard you tell these stories a few times, but let's go all the way back. What was your first exposure to music and what made you kind of put your life on that path?
Well, as far back as I can remember, I remember being in my mother's womb.
Perfect. Was it like
not
Mozart,
that far back?
Mozart playing in there, or a little AC/DC?
It was George Jones, I think. That's who it was.
George Jones.
So,
some men would say that was the voice of God. George Jones was. We know the
exactly
voice of
who
God.
the person that would say that is. Yes.
Yes, we do.
No, I come from a musical family. All my grandparents or my grandpa and actually my peepaw. I'm from Texas. We have a peepaw. We have a pawpaw. Depends on what side of the family you want to call. But my peepaw and his brothers and cousins, and they were all musical. So every time we go to a family reunion, there was always guitars out, people singing. My dad was a musician as well. And when I was a kid, I kind of got the bug for it. I did a, what is it called? I did a...
like a talent show?
Yeah, I did a talent show in like first or second grades, singing a George Strait song with my little brother. And from then on, I just kind of got the bug to be a singer. I did some weird stuff I got made fun of a lot for as well. Like I sung on the announcements, like the morning announcement at schools. I remember doing that.
That must have been hell for you in school.
I don't even remember what I sang, but it was part of I think it was a punishment. I think I had to apologize to like a teacher or another student. I know it happened twice, but it did not go well. And it was my parents, I think, that suggested it as a punishment. I don't remember. But I was singing, ended up in an all-state choir in like 5th grade. Then we moved to East Texas from a little town called Hiram, Texas. Went to school in a town called Wills Point, Texas, which was right over middle of nowhere. When I got there, there was no... If you hadn't been there since like 4th grade, you weren't allowed to join the school band. Yeah, even if I took lessons, they wouldn't let us into the program at all. So I ended up just being in choir. And I thought it was funny because later on, like in high school, I was in a church band, like the worship band at a church, and the assistant director of our high school's band was there, and he asked me, why haven't you ever joined the band? And I just had to laugh, and I told him why. And all he saw was me. I would walk up to the piano, I'd play, walk up to the drums, play, sing, play guitar, all that stuff. And he was just baffled. Why aren't you in the band? So I told him, and he got a nice little chuckle out of that.
Because they literally won't let me join.
Yeah, I was too good for him. But yeah, so I was in choir, but they didn't extend the choirs past junior high. So 8th grade was the end of choir. After that, it was nothing.
Right on.
But yeah, that's kind of how I started in music. I had an interesting childhood. I was a little sheltered when it came to music. I was only allowed to listen to country music or Radio Disney. So I have a lot of 90s country music as some of my favorite. Good old Garth, some Shania.
Garth, Shania, yeah.
King George. Yeah, some Tim McGraw. Yeah. All those. I love those.
What's your favorite of 90s country? Do you have a top?
Oh, it's George. It's King George all day.
King George all the way, of course.
Yeah. I got to see him live at the Astrodome show, which is one of the last shows they did. And as big of a King George fan, I think it was it was either my first concert or one of my first big concerts. I ended up falling asleep. I feel bad in retrospect.
You fell asleep while seeing King George play.
Yeah, I mean he had a guy named Phil Vassar open up for him, and it was Phil Vassar, and then President Bush, the Judds, Charlie Pride or somebody. They all got up and sang the national anthem before George went on. So George Strait had to follow President Bush.
What a star-studded cast!
Yeah, and I love George Strait, but at the same time, like he has this whole thing where he stands there and he can do it. And now as an adult, I can appreciate it. But as a kid, like it's getting on 10 o'clock at night. I'm falling asleep. The guy who opened for him, Phil Vassar, was like break dancing on top of his piano. That was exciting for me to watch. So that was one of my first shows. As
about high energy as you can get. And then you got George Strait coming out and he just stands there. And he's playing his guitar and he's singing, and that's what he does. That's George Strait. George Strait can do it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the only thing about George Strait was the stage turned in a circle, so it was in the round kind of. And now coming from the live side, I'm curious as to how they did that. It's the same kind of Ed Sheeran setup that they had, how they ran cables and everything. It'd be fun to see that, but
it's a mind-blowing setup, and so many big artists have been doing like in the round and 360 style. A while ago, U2 was a big one. They did it. Anytime you see Garth Brooks play these days, he's doing his stadium tours where he might be playing 10 dates a year. And I mean, talk about King George. It's also King Garth. He can do that. But when you go see Garth Brooks, it is a stage, 360 degrees set up. That way, everybody in the stadium has a chance to see him. Yeah. And it's the only way to tour when you're that big. So 360 makes a lot of sense, and it's really cool. And it's also cool that even George Strait was doing it all the way back then, too.
Yeah, and Ed Sheeran's doing the same thing where the stage rotates and everything, but they have an outer ring. I was a kid, so I didn't pay too much attention to the stage. But Ed Sheeran has the outer ring with his loop pedals on it, just at different parts of the stage. That's
right, of course. So that's pretty cool. I mean, your musical background is interesting, being as sheltered as you were. The choice between Radio Disney and country is really one hell of a choice. So you either were able to listen to the most bubblegum of squeaky clean pop or 90s country. But I mean, even some of the older stuff, like we talked about George Jones a little earlier too. Some of those songs, maybe subject matter can be a little heavy.
Yeah.
So it's quite the dichotomy between Radio Disney and country music.
It was great storytelling. That's what it was.
Of course. And that's, if there's one thing you can say about country music, are some of the best at being actual storytellers.
Yeah. One of the I started playing guitar. I don't even know like I said, my dad, his brothers, my grandparents all play guitar. Most of them sang as well. Started playing guitar at like maybe 10. I can't remember. I got a Takamine for some reason. I don't know. And for some reason, out of my dad, all of his brothers, I have a ton of cousins. I have several brothers of my own. And for some reason, I'm the only one that picked up the guitar and continued on. One of the first books of... It was tab with sheet music. It was the entire Garth Brooks collection. And they gave it to me, and on the inside they wrote, "You're going to be the next Garth Brooks." Well, that was really far off. I'm not the next Garth Brooks at all. But I'm like 10, 11 years old. Like, oh, yeah.
Right. You're not the next Garth Brooks. You're just some burned out weirdo with, well, I guess an Apogee interface, since that's not a Focusrite on the desk there.
Yeah, we got the nice interface up here.
But no, that's really cool. As unique as your upbringing was, especially in regards to music, it for sure helped give you a unique perspective, and knowing what your musical tastes are these days.
It was super fun because
you're all over the place.
Yeah, it was super fun because like once Backstreet Boys and NSYNC came out, I was a fan of both of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they were getting play on Radio Disney because, kind of Disney kids in most of them. And,
of course.
Yeah, that was entertaining. And it was the land of cassette tapes. So you just waited for your favorite song on the radio and you hit record. Because my parents weren't going to buy me CDs. I didn't. Of course. I bought my first real CDs. I mean, I used my parents' collection. Like I love Sawyer Brown's cover of the Races On. Like that was one of my favorite things. I wore that tape into the ground. But the first CDs I actually bought, I was going from my mom's house to my dad's house, and I can't remember if it was from Texas to Ohio or from Tennessee to Ohio, because I've lived in a couple different states when I was a kid. Right. And I got I think School of Rock had just come out, and I was getting
classic.
Really into like electric guitar and everything. So I got the Pearl Jam album with the llama or the alpaca on it. Mm-hmm. What was the name of that album?
That one would have been Versus, I believe.
I got that one, and I got the School of Rock CD, and I just listened to it on my headphones in the back seat all the way to Ohio.
So that's one hell of a soundtrack.
Yeah, that was kind of my first experience with rock music.
That's awesome, and I'm willing to bet, since now we're progressing towards your high school years, you probably played in a band or two yourself, yeah?
Yeah. A couple, yeah. Not very good ones, but...
Well, whose high school band is very good? I mean, come on, we can be real. Very few are actually ready to go, gonna make it big while you're playing in high school.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I was in the first band in high school. I was in a Christian rock band. We had an awful name. Now that I look back at it, we were awful. Like we had subjectively one good song, and that was the only song people really came to see at the shows. But we're also in the middle of nowhere, so people would just come out because there's nothing else to do. But yeah, the name of the band,
captive audience.
Yeah, the name of the band was Not Ashamed, and I'm very very ashamed of that band name.
Looking back on it,
yeah, it's awful. But yeah, I mean we had a large pull in our little area. Like we had some regional success, and that was about it. It wasn't ever going to go anywhere. We the one song people really wanted to hear was one that I wrote, but then they wouldn't let me write any more songs. I'd do stuff, and it's like right at the brink of that transition from like the 90s rock kind of style, and the scene is just really picking up steam. So Forever the Sickest Kids is out there. We had the pleasure of opening for a ton of great bands. Like I think one of the ones that's still going is Fit for a King, and like in their infancy we would play shows together.
That's awesome.
A Bullet for Pretty Boy. I don't know if they're still going. I know they made it quite a ways. Can't remember if we played with Flipside or not, or if it was just a buddies show. I think it might have just been a buddies show. But Flipside, they went on to be Forever the Sickest Kids. Like that whole music scene where I was at, even though we're in the middle of nowhere, it was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like an incredible time. And you talking about your experience in bands has jogged my memory. That's a key thing I left out of my own history when I was talking about it for what felt like an eternity is when I was in high school, I also did play in a band as well, because it's just what you do when you're in high school and you play instruments and you're into music. Probably I would imagine that your band was a lot more successful than ours was. My good friend Ben Altamari, he was writing some songs and he wanted to get a band together. So it was Ben Altamari, Zach Katonic, and myself. Ben sang and played the guitar, Zach played drums, and even though I'm a guitarist, I got forced into playing bass because that's just what happens when everybody wants to be a guitar player and nobody wants to be a bassist. But it was fine. I enjoy playing the bass, and it's a wonderful instrument as well. So we practiced his songs. It was like a 5-song set. And we played our very first show together at a coffee house of all places called Java Trails in North Huntington, Pittsburgh, or North Huntington, PA. It's a little far away to be Pittsburgh. And it was an experience, to say the least. The coffee shop owner was very eccentric. I forget what his name was. I think it was Raj. And he wanted to book bands, and it was really weird because it was trying to be an upscale coffee shop, like a nice hipster place.
So a bad idea. And he would book
these... it was the worst idea in the world. You can't imagine. So he booked these bands, and a few of them we were really good friends with because a lot of them were dudes that went to the same high school we were going to, or it was people that we knew from other high schools as well. So this first show goes off, and it's like mostly heavy music, some harder rock stuff, and like a little bit of indie mixed in with some of them. And we play our set. We end our set with a cover of Korn's Freak on a Leash, and we hang out and watch all the other bands play as you do. And at the end of the night, the headliner was a band called 13th Floor, and they ended their set with a cover of Black Sabbath's Black Sabbath. The singer plugged his acoustic guitar into a guitar amp and cranked the distortion up. And then at the end, as the song was ending, he smashed his acoustic guitar off the floor in this coffee shop. And there's pieces of guitar flying everywhere. It was incredible, but the owner loved it. He was not mad. That's exactly what he wanted. I don't know why he operated a coffee shop. He could have just operated a venue and probably been a little bit more successful, but we played there a couple of times after. When we started writing music together, it wasn't just so much like a Ben Altamari solo act. We formed a band called Schizoschism out of that. It was still the three of us, and it's one hell of a name, and we played what I can only describe is some of the weirdest heavy music that you could think of at the time. Our influences were like Dillinger Escape Plan, Converge, Mastodon, A Life Once Lost, and like we had some groove, but we were doing some really odd time signatures and working with like really dissonant passages too. Probably a little ahead of our time back then because it was like 2009, and especially in the scene in Pittsburgh, it's really rough if you're playing music like that. So you can imagine it didn't really go anywhere. The last show we played at the Java Trails coffee shop, he had a back room built that was actually more like a space for bands to play instead of just setting up shop out in his coffee shop and just having the walls come down. But that show was really good. The highlight of our band's career, short as it was we opened up for Beneath the Massacre, which is a great tech death metal band. They, I believe, are still going off the top of my head, or maybe they aren't, I don't know, but that was a really cool time. And I do have pictures of being on stage at that show and some of the chaos, so we'll be sure to put them in here and just show what we were doing at the time. I mean, we were just stupid kids, but it was a really fun time. And looking back now, I know we sucked. The other guys, I'm sure, would say, yeah, we definitely sucked. But we were having the time of our lives, just playing music. Didn't matter. We had one EP that we had recorded by one of our school friends that was going to end up going to school for recording as well. And we had like, I think 500 copies pressed and only ever sold one to one guy. And it was at that Beneath the Massacre show. And I'll overlay the album art so you can see it as well. He dug the music, and then after he bought it, he sat on the floor just staring at the cover art, like really taking it in. And I was like, wow, got ourselves a super fan. But yeah, I don't want to take over you talking about yourself. You just jogged my memory because, we both played in bands, and it was definitely a key formation of where my music career has taken me so far, to sitting in this chair talking to you about it. So you played in bands in high school, of course. Your biggest highlight was opening for a bunch of cool acts as they were starting to get big as well.
Well, I mean, I think some of those shows we were the closer because we had the larger pool when most of these artists were starting. I do know we did Fit for a King several shows, and Bullet for Pretty Boy several shows. But I mean, we had a pool. It's the middle of nowhere in our area.
Of course.
Like the draw didn't travel well. But in that area, we did really well. Like, we still have, the venue's closed down, so I guess it's kind of moot, but like record attendance for one of the venues in our area, which isn't saying much, but it was kind of cool to us, at least.
Well, that's cool. Just a band of high school kids being able to have that much pull when you think about it. So that's a pretty cool record.
Yeah. So
coming out of high school, what were your next plans? Where did you end up next?
I went to college for a little bit. I graduated at 17, so right when we finished high school, I went into college, and that wasn't going to work out, right? I went for like a degree in business or something, business administration, something really boring and safe. And
that's 100% not you.
Yeah, no, not at all. I got business up front, party in the back, and there's no up front anymore. So it's just all party, bro.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah. So I left the original band, I left the original band. We ended up reforming a new one in college, Amber Love, which was just based off a girl's name that we knew. We just liked the name when it was contracted together. And that was the time of like Anne Berlin was big, and we just wanted an easy name.
See what you did there.
Yeah. So we did some shows. I got kicked out because I was a dick. I had a diva moment where I was mad about bottled water. There was no water at the house at the rehearsal. So like they kicked me out, and it was mostly the same members. Like, we had a different drummer and we didn't have a different bass player, just a different drummer.
Right.
But then they went on, they got another singer. About a year or year and a half later, they called me up. We start again. And I'm really trying to make the whole music thing work and trying to get the whole thing together. And then something's going wrong at home. Like, I could tell something's wrong, but nobody's talking to me. I'm living with my dad. By this point in time, I was living with my dad. And instead of going to my classes at college, I was now the janitor at the same college. Like, just a full 180. And I could tell something's wrong at home. So I'm like, I got to do something. So I just thought about my options. We planned a last show, which is one of my favorite videos. Our last show is the one where my guitarist is breakdancing in the middle of a breakdown. Like, he slipped and he's spinning on his back with his Gibson Explorer. It's hilarious to me. Yeah, sorry, Scott. I don't mean to call you out. I won't put it in the video, but if you could find my personal TikTok, you'll find it. It's hilarious. So I did my last show, and my options at that time were Boston was hiring police. I knew there was a large music. Yeah. And I'm from East Texas, so I'm just trying to weigh the options. Boston was hiring police, and they were doing bonuses. I heard there was a really good music scene in Canada, and I was planning to go up there and busk, but then they want like $20,000 or something for you to move there. And then the next option was the Army. Ended up going with the Army. I enlisted, and shortly after I enlisted, I found out what was wrong. My dad had come down with cancer, so it was kind of the right move to do. Is at that point he's paying my bills, he's helping pay.
Right.
I had a little brother; he was still taking care of my brother, and then I had two older brothers that still needed him as well. So I left. I went in the Army, left. I did 3 years, ended up getting hurt, med boarded, and at the ripe old age of 23. Right before I got out, I went to the studio. Like, I was planning on coming out and becoming an oncologist. And as you can see with this whole thing, if you have me on the other side of a table from you telling telling you have cancer. This is what we're going to do. You're going to tell me to eat my shorts. Absolutely. Right. I'm going for a second opinion. All right.
Right, of course.
But like that's what I wanted to do at the time. But I was also getting into the cover side of YouTube as well, like Boyce Avenue and all that stuff. I could see them having success, and I wanted to start doing it. So I forget what DAW I was using, and I was familiar with DAWs. In the first band, I recorded all of our music, mixed it, all that stuff. I did that at 16, 15, somewhere in there.
Right, yeah.
But the creation side of it wasn't working for me. Like, I didn't have the right VSTs or whatever. I didn't know a lot about sound design. So I went to a studio, and at that time I was in San Antonio, and went to a studio, found a guy online, nice little space, and I'm excited. You know, we never did studio anything with the old band. It was all DIY. And
of course.
Went in there, had one song cut, ended up costing me $1,000.
Oh yeah, baby.
$1,000 recorded, had some violins played, had a drummer come in, mixed, mastered, got it back. I was never happy with it. Everybody else loves it. And now going back as to what I know about audio engineering and what it takes to make a great song, I am so furious about what that guy charged me for, because I could just hear so many issues in it. And so I took the time and went back and looked him up, and he had claimed to have like all kinds of Grammys and all this stuff. He had platinum records in the on all of his walls, and he was not associated with any of those projects. Like just full on had money, created a space, told people he did these things, and it just did not exist. I never thought to even look this guy up, but now you can now, and you should.
Classic.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and somebody claims they're doing something, yeah, they're probably not. Especially if they're affordable. If they've got Grammys and they're affordable, maybe one, they enjoy what they do, or they don't have Grammys.
Which is possible.
It is possible for people to do it very cheaply, and they have Grammys or Grammy nominees, nominations.
English
Grammy
is
nominations.
A hard language.
I'm from Texas. I don't
English
speak it.
is a very hard language.
I speak Texan, all right, and not well.
Yeah, it's definitely key to vet people, especially when you can buy platinum records these days. We could line the walls of our studio with platinum records because they make repros for almost every single platinum record that's ever existed.
Yeah,
$200, you got yourself a platinum record. Doesn't mean a damn thing.
Yeah, every time I see
it on your wall.
Every time I see someone with platinum records, and I know they have a course in their bio. It's every time. Mm-hmm. If I see platinum records behind them and a course in their bio, I'm just red flags all day.
So this is a good time to bring up the course that we're selling, right?
Yeah.
What is it, like 3 easy payments of $1,000 every 2 weeks, and we'll just teach you? No, not at all.
Yeah.
That's not at all what we're here to do.
You get 1 word a week.
Yeah, we're charging $1,000 per word of this course. It's pretty exclusive.
And we're only going to cover the base level of it. Like just enough to where we Googled and we knew to where we could like make you think we knew what we were talking about.
Of course. Yeah. So after you hit up this studio and you were disappointed with the end result, which is sad because it happens a lot to countless people all the time. What was your next move?
Sorry, I just a little rant in the middle there. I'll rant a lot. If you're watching this, I'll rant a lot. I hold nothing back. I'm refusing to curse as much as I normally do on this because it's the first one, but you'll hear me say F-bombs, and I will call anybody anything out any day.
Eventually we'll get a little bit more relaxed, but the rants especially, I know for a fact a lot of the rants, and Kreg will do a lot of them, they'll happen either naturally when we do these longer form podcasts, or he'll just have a rant that he wants to do. That'll probably end up on places like our TikTok, a little short forms, 2-3 minute rant, and you'll get quicker access to those there than sitting through a hour and a half long podcast, which is what we're getting to already here. But that's okay.
Yeah, it is pretty long, isn't it?
Well, there's a lot to say. There's a lot of foundation to just put our history out there so people can get to know us and what we're doing. So,
and now they know I'm scatterbrained because I don't even remember what you just asked me. What happened after?
I was
after the studio.
I was getting ready to after the studio.
So after the studio, I did one more song with him. He cut me a deal. It was $300.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he felt bad about
$1,000 to $300.
I think he felt bad about robbing me blind and not actually, lining up the drums, doing any editing whatsoever. No tuning, not tightening anything up. Oh, I'm not kidding at all. That's why I was so mad afterwards.
And you didn't even get any of that.
Oh yeah, it was awful. And it wasn't even him doing it. It was an intern that was like 4 years younger than I was.
Naturally.
Yeah.
Naturally.
But anyway, intern was great. I hope he's doing something. I hope the owner of the studio is doing nothing. But anyway, so I get out of the Army. I start continuing to try and do covers and stuff, and it's not going well. Lack of quality, all that stuff. And I'm getting ready to make my choice of what school I'm going to. And at the very last second, I switched from oncology to Bachelor's of Science in Audio Engineering. And yeah, so I go to the Art Institute of Dallas at the time. Yeah. Go there. I do one semester there, and I decide, well, they don't even have a studio built. I had a buddy from the Army.
Oh, no.
Who was just begging me. He got out around the same time I did. He's like, bro, just come out here, man. I'm in San Diego. It's all sunny. Like, you can just stay here. There's a school out here as well. So I ended up packing up everything and moving from Dallas, Texas to San Diego. And it was like on a 5-hour notice. I called my mom, and I'm like, hey, I'm leaving.
Just so you know,
hey mom, hey dad, both on the same. Just I'm leaving, going to San Diego, and I've been gone at this point for 3 years, so that it wasn't anything that they were not expecting to happen. I'm sure they were sad about it, but packed up my little Mustang GT and drove it all the way out to San Diego. Started
That's
college
one heck of
there.
a drive too. Yeah,
started college there, and it was great because when I started. I'm going to say I never finished the college. I never actually got my degree, and you'll see why here. When I started, I told them that I had one stipulation. It's the Art Institute, right? I'm like, I cannot draw a straight line with a ruler. I don't want to do any kind of physical art. I just want to learn audio engineering, and that's it. Next thing you know, I'm in the psychology classes and all that extra fluff that they throw in there. Like, this is a trade, man. You don't have to do all these extra stuff. Aside from the whole I'm educated and I have a piece of paper. Our industry, we don't give a shit about the paper. But the breaking point was, and there was some stuff going on with the school. It's shady. I do not advise going to it. I toured the Full Sail campus, and I just got irate. I was so angry. Like
you were very upset that day.
Yeah, if I had paid for it, I used the GI Bill. So those of you that do have student debt, I apologize. I had the GI Bill, so I had the luxury of doing it. I went to the Full Sail campus, and I felt bad for anybody that had to pay because it was just a ripoff. It was just bad. Anyway, I'm in an art class, which I had already told them I didn't want to take, and I'm cutting bodies out of a magazine, cutting other people's heads off, and gluing it to the bodies of the other people, and cutting. This is the assignment. This is not me being a serial killer sociopath. This was the assignment, and I'm just like, what in the hell am I doing? This is a absolute waste of time. And then shortly after that, I also found out that I only have 3 years with the GI Bill, and then it just taps out. So I just squeeze all the classes that I can in and just ignore the other ones. After that, I left. Oh, there was another thing I did in there. The nonprofit. While I was in college, I was looking for a band, found a nonprofit that was putting a band together to raise awareness for human trafficking. Auditioned for them, worked with them for quite a while, ended up being the president of the nonprofit, getting voted in for that. And I still am technically, but one of the founders has passed away. So the nonprofit kind of went down. But that was the other band I was in. We did some fun stuff, but nothing big.
Nothing like what you'd done previously. Well, I mean, that happens.
And we did a lot of stuff with the nonprofit too, but...
Well, in a lot of aspects, that's more important than anything you'd ever done before anyways.
Yeah. And that was the whole point of it. I got really into it, that they drew my heart in.
Well, of course, and you enlightened me a lot in our conversations over the years. human trafficking is still a very big and serious issue, and it's one that doesn't really get a lot of light shed on it, like almost at all. And with everything going on in the world, in the news today, with all of that noise anyways, it's really easy to just kind of forget that human trafficking is a very big problem, and it's not just a third world problem.
Yeah. It's
not at all.
Very prevalent in the United States. The last number we had was like from 2012, and it was 300,000 per year, which is the size, I think it was Cleveland. Like, picture the entire city of Cleveland is trafficked in the U.S. Throughout the entire year. Cleveland has a football team and a baseball team.
Yep.
Do they have a basketball team?
Sure do. Cavaliers.
Team. Oh, yeah, that's right. LeBron.
Yep. LeBron coming up. The Cavaliers. Of course.
Yeah.
Football all the way. But yeah, no, and that's awesome, the work that you did with that. It was super important. And like I said before, you know, all the stuff that you'd done with your bands previously, maybe not as important as the work you were doing there, but I know a lot of good came from that. So after all of that, you're out in San Diego. The Art Institute, or Scam Institute, was what it was for you. What I guess at this point in the story, we're kind of getting to the point where almost our paths crossed.
There's a couple more years.
There's a few.
I'm not
more
going
years.
Linearly. Like, you know, I'm not very good at.
It's just like.
Yeah, I'm Quentin Tarantinoing this shit. You can call me Mr. Pink.
Mr. Pink. Okay, Steve Buscemi.
Yeah. While I was still in college, actually a girl through the nonprofit, which you've met, and hopefully we'll have her on the show. Like, she's just coming off an Emmy win. Like, that's kind of cool. We want to kind of bring in cool guests and everything.
Absolutely.
So whenever we get her on, it'll be fun. But she met me through the nonprofit, and I started working with her through the studio Signature Sound. So I was freelancing at Signature Sound, mostly for her. But that was cool. So I started doing studio stuff, but then I'm like, hey, yeah, this is not working in San Diego. Let me take everything, and I'm gonna end up moving back to Dallas. So I moved back to Dallas. After a couple months back in Dallas, I ended up signing up with a production company out of Dallas that did live shows. Live shows is where my passion was. And I'd been mixing, like, Quentin Tarantino, here we go. I'd been mixing, like, in church when I was 14, 15. And then all of our shows, we brought our own PA. I was mixing that, like, all the live shows. And I had the foundational knowledge and everything on how to do it. So I showed up, and I'm like, hey, I'm an audio engineer. I'm looking for work. And they put me on a hand call. And I look at my phone, and that's not what I'm asking for. I'm not a stagehand. I got this. I didn't respond to it. I went to the actual office, said, hey, I want to speak to the head of audio. And I said, I'm not a stagehand. I don't care if I don't get paid. Have me on one gig. I promise it won't matter. He said, okay. Threw me to the wolves, like, right then and there. And it took one show, and they were like, okay, yeah, this guy's got it. Had the pleasure of doing some major festivals and major artists. I'm not going to name drop, but there's some big ones. Then after that, I get the call to come out on your tour. And
the rest, as they say, is history. But no, that's cool. In a lot of respects, I think your background's even cooler than mine. My story feels a little bit mundane. You've got a lot more life packed into those years than a lot of the things that I did, but that's cool. I think that's one of the really big things that makes what we're doing here as unique, because we've got a couple of very different perspectives with our own sets of strengths and weaknesses that end up complementing each other very well. So it's been awesome. I've really enjoyed kicking this off, getting a little info about ourselves out there. Not so much enjoy talking about myself, but now you know a little bit more about me, you know a little bit more about Kreg, and the only thing left to do to wrap this up is just give you a little bit about what you can expect moving forward. Our next podcasts will probably just touch on topics that are something that we want to talk about, that we think will be useful, whether you're an artist, a musician, just starting out, even engineers as well. We try to share the knowledge and spread the wealth as much as we can in that regard. We're not going to do fluff
I hate these fluff videos.
Oh man,
Like they're like,
fluff.
I don't have anything to say, and here's 10 things that you need to do, and it's just 10 of the dumbest things you ever heard in your life. It's like brush your teeth. No shit, dumbass.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the worst. The longer form content like this, I don't anticipate everything going to be as long as 2 hours. But if it's longer form in the realm of an hour or a little more, we're not going to pack that up with fluff. It's going to be very much a lot of substance there, especially the stuff that we want to talk about, because we've got some really heated opinions on the direction the industry is heading with Dolby Atmos. Spoiler alert, so far I'm not impressed. And then we've got other
Garbage,
topics.
then it's folded garbage. Hey, someone can do laundry.
Thanks, Apple. Then we've got other topics, even on a songwriting basis, to talk about that's really interesting, like how the use of profanity doesn't seem to be getting in the way of songs just rocketing up the charts, being in the top 10, top 40. You will see more often than not these days songs that have use of profanity, whether it's just a little bit or gratuitous use, still end up becoming #1 hits. So that's another topic that'll be really interesting. Like Kreg hinted, we do plan on having guests come on the show if they'll have us and grace us with their
Emmy
presence.
winner. I got a Grammy winner friend. The former vice president of Sony. I'm going to try to get her on here. Hers would probably be about branding because she owns her own branding company now, which is very important as an artist. But,
Oh, it's so valuable. It's something that you can tend to forget about when you get so caught up in just the music and trying to create music, that you are your own brand, and that matters a whole heck of a lot when you're trying to get exposure and cut through all the noise that's out there. So that'll be really really good.
Yeah, and being since we come from the live side, maybe we get some live people in here as well. Like some of the
You never know.
those A-list system techs, some monitor guys for some big acts, front of house guys.
When they get to clear some time in their busy schedules, they might also choose to grace us with their presence as well. So we'll have guests, and that'll be a lot more longer form content. You can also expect some videos on tips, tricks, how-tos, maybe run through a couple of mixes and break down some of our workflow, things that works well, and try to open up your world to some things that you might not have considered or tried, because everything about this is experimentation, and any tip or trick I ever give is something that worked for me in the moment, and it's not something that you can just save as a preset and use every time. There are some, of course, fundamentals that can translate to various situations, but if there's one thing I can say is experiment, because that's all it really is at the end of the day. And
Play
then
with stuff till it breaks, especially if you're not at a deadline.
yeah, if you got the luxury and you're not working on a paid project that has a deadline, or if you just have something that you can work on and you have time, absolutely. Play with it until it breaks, figure out why it broke, and then do something different. And you will end up finding your own unique methods that you never would have before if you didn't take the time to just experiment. But with that, I am John Hendrix, once again, head audio engineer and one of the co-founders here at Twisby Records. That is Kreg Durant.
So
Another my best friend and co-founder here at Twisby Records as well. I hope that you've enjoyed this podcast. Long-winded some sections have been, and I hope you'll stick around for all the other content that we have planned and in the works for you. So once again, smash that like button, leave a comment if you want to just say hi. If you've got any questions about us and our backgrounds, leave it down there. We'll do our best to reply to comments as they come in when we have the time. Always want to engage with people that want to engage with us. And we'll see you in the next one.